first let go.
Was there a number to put on how many people may have died from these grenades as the U.S. Attorney's Office looked the other way? No way to quantify that?
No, ma'am. Much like Fast and Furious, the body count may be, we may still be counting it in the future. These grenades and these guns are unaccounted for.
Thousands are dead. It's called a false flag. To destabilize Mexico, blame the Second Amendment.
One Mexican official, a top Mexican official, once told me, yeah, the U.S. is involved in the drug war, unfortunately on the wrong side.
The agencies of our government have contributed to this violence by intentionally allowing thousands of guns to be trafficked from U.S. to Mexico. The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives decided to let thousands of guns walk.
Documents show the inevitable result. The guns ATF let go began showing up at crime scenes in Mexico. And as ATF stood by, watching thousands of weapons hit the street, the Fast and Furious Group supervisor noted the escalating Mexican violence. 958 killed in March 2010, the most violent month since 2005.
The deadliest year yet. 2010 was marked by extreme violence in Mexico. More than 15,000 people were killed.
The same email notes, our subjects purchased 359 firearms during March alone, including numerous Barrett 50 caliber rifles.
The gun right here, it's a Barrett 50 caliber rifle. A year ago, you never seen a gun like this. Unfortunately, it's a weapon of choice. It's a weapon in demand by the Mexican cartels. This gun is primarily used in the U.S. military as a sniper rifle. It has an effective kill range in excess of a mile. This round would easily penetrate a light armored vehicle. It would certainly penetrate an engine block of a vehicle, of a sheriff's officer, of a border patrol agent. This is the type of firepower that is south of the border. This is the type of ammunition that is being acquired here, being trafficked, and winding up in the hands of the narcos.
A home video seized by federal agents shows a 50 caliber rifle being tested in Arizona before officials say it was smuggled to Mexico.
On the phone, one Project Gunrunner source who didn't want to be identified told us just how many guns flooded the black market under ATF's watchful eye.
The numbers are over 2,500 on that case, by the way. That's how many guns were sold, including some 50 calibers that they let walk.
50 caliber weapons are fearsome. For months, ATF agents followed 50 caliber Barrett rifles and other guns believed headed for the Mexican border, but were ordered to let them go. One distraught agent was often overheard on ATF radios begging and pleading to be allowed to intercept transports. The answer, negative, stand down.
What has happened is the agents have identified being commanded by Washington, meaning Melson, the acting director of ATF, and also the Justice Department, presumably that's Lenny Brewer, the Assistant Attorney General over the ATF, as having ordered these things to continue, even when agents said, I heard I'm supposed to be letting this happen. Are you sure?
Field agents in Phoenix were told that they were the first ATF Southwest Border Group to be pursuing the Fast and Furious strategy, and were told that it was, quote, the pinnacle of U.S. law enforcement techniques.
We're at the tip of the ATF spear. That's what a Phoenix ATF supervisor told agents as he tried to bolster support for Operation Fast and Furious.
There was so much opposition to the gun walking that an ATF supervisor issued this email noting a schism among the agents. Whether you care or not, people of rank and authority at headquarters are paying close attention to this case. We are doing what they envisioned. If you don't think this is fun, you're in the wrong line of work. Maybe the Maricopa County Jail is hiring detention officers, and you can get $30,000 to serve lunch to inmates.
The line agents told us that as part of Operation Fast and Furious, 1, they were instructed to cut off surveillance of suspected straw purchasers. 2, they were ordered to forego arrests of straw purchasers. And 3, they were prohibited from seizing or interdicting weapons from straw purchasers on several occasions when they believed they had the lawful authority to do so. Mr. Newell, these are very serious allegations. But in your transcribed interview with the committee, you said you never heard these complaints before they became public in February of this year. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
The committee has apparently identified a conflict in the testimony. Either the line agents are having difficulty being able to communicate the truth, or their supervisor is having that difficulty.
At least 11 ATF agents and senior managers voiced fierce opposition to the strategy. It got ugly, says one. There was screaming and yelling, says another. A third warned, this is crazy. Somebody is going to get killed. Sure enough, the weapons soon began surfacing at crime scenes in Mexico. Dozens of them, sources say, including shootouts with government officials. One agent argued with a superior asking, are you prepared to go to the funeral of a federal officer killed with one of these guns? Another says, every time there was a shooting near the border, we would all hold our breath, hoping it wasn't one of our guns. Then Border Patrol agent Brian Terry was murdered. These are the serial numbers on the 2 assault rifles found at the scene. They match 2 rifles ATF watched Jaime Avila buy in Phoenix nearly a year before. ATF watched as Avila and other suspects bought huge quantities of weapons, supposedly for personal use. They included 575 AK-47 type semi-automatic rifles.
Jaime Avila, the guy who bought the guns that the ATF allowed to buy these guns in January 2010, nearly a year before December, when he was killed. They arrested him the same exact day Brian Terry was killed. Emails were flying December 15th, less than 24 hours after his murder, about the guns being connected to Fast and Furious, not to mention Eric Holder's closest staffers, Monty Wilkinson, knew the guns were connected to a government gun running program the same day, and it was informed of Brian Terry's death that just hours after he was murdered. Those emails started flying right away. The cover-up started immediately.
The U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona sought to conceal a link between their controversial gun-walking operation known as Fast and Furious and the death of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry. That's according to 2 Republican members of Congress, Charles Grassley and Darrell Issa. In a letter they write, in the hours after Agent Terry's death, the lead prosecutor on Fast and Furious, Emory Hurley, apparently contemplated the connection between the 2 cases and sought to prevent the connection from being disclosed. An internal ATF email dated the day after Terry's death reveals the quick decision not to disclose the source of the weapons found at the murder scene. Quote, this way we do not divulge our current case, Fast and Furious, or the Border Patrol shooting case.
Emails also show the U.S. Attorney's Office in Arizona knew almost immediately guns recovered at the murder scene of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry were purchased by Fast and Furious suspect Jaime Avila. But officials allegedly tried to cover it up. They say the ATF could have arrested Avila almost a year before he purchased the murder weapon and dozens of other guns. But it chose not to.
Everybody in America should be outraged. They were used as collateral. They could have cared less that guns were being handed to criminals, to people that could not have them. And they didn't take into account our lives, the Mexican people's lives, our property, and our safety.
That's troubling. That scares the hell out of me when I think that there's just a local office of the ATF or the FBI that's authorizing criminals to engage in this type of activity, taking AK-47s and letting them get smuggled into Mexico or, Southern California on our side of the border.
I'm the only member on this committee that's from Arizona. Yeah, we lost a border agent. But we're further impugned because these guns are going to show up at crime scenes, particularly in Arizona, from here to whenever. I'm very taken back by when you said, we shouldn't be doing this. We shouldn't be gun walking. And that everybody knows that that's inappropriate.
Letting drugs walk, letting money walk, that's one thing. But letting guns walk, I simply don't see, I just don't see how that's an appropriate law enforcement technique.
That shows me exactly why I'm so appalled. Is that if there was a doctrine out there that said, listen, if you walk guns, you're going to do time. That's the penalty that should be placed here. Because that's what we're going to have to endure. Do you think it's appropriate that we just say, don't do it? You shouldn't be doing gun walking. Or do you say, it shouldn't be done, and if it is done and you're found culpable and you're a participant in this, that you should be held to the same standards that the rest of us are?
Well, I mean, what I did after I found out about gun walking was to issue a directive that said this is unacceptable, don't do it, and you will be held accountable if, in fact, you do it.
So you will agree with me that if they do this, then they're going and they're put before a jury of their peers that they would do criminal time?
I don't know about criminal time. I mean, one has to look at the facts of a particular case, and if somebody did something with criminal intent, I mean, sure, that would be appropriate. But if somebody did something with criminal intent, I mean, that's you've got to get past, beyond a reasonable doubt, and there's a whole variety of things.
But you just can't slap somebody's hand on this and just say, don't do it again. What I'm seeing here is something inappropriate, and that is in Main Street America, we don't get these same kind of privileges to make mistakes. And we're dealing with people's lives.
We will be living with the consequences of Fast and Furious for years to come. And, I think Judge Poe, Ted Poe from Texas, said it very well yesterday. No life is worth more than another. He's a former prosecutor. I am too. So you certainly grieve the loss of a law enforcement officer like Brian Terry. But there are lives being lost on the other side of the border, too. And how do you look the President of Mexico or the Attorney General of Mexico in the eye? They knew nothing about this investigation. We're asking for their help in drug trafficking. And meanwhile, we're sending guns to their drug cartels, and they know nothing about it.
Tens of thousands of Mexicans, innocent citizens and dedicated security forces, have lost their lives. And we thank our Mexican partners for their close cooperation following the murder of one of our Immigration and Customs agents, Special Agent Jamie Zapata.
Agent Zapata's story is one that we must not forget, and it is one that we will not.
The murder of Agent Jaime Zapata on assignment in Mexico happened more than 8 months ago, but has been shrouded in mystery. We've obtained law enforcement records that show the gun that killed him came from the U.S., and the suspects who allegedly trafficked the firearm had been under law enforcement's watch for months in Dallas, even videotaped taking part in trafficking crimes.
The latest scandal developments surrounding the murder of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement agent Jaime Zapata. Zapata was murdered by Mexican drug cartel members in February of last year with a weapon connected to Fast and Furious.
The ATF is telling us that they did not watch guns walk into Mexico from Texas, that they're not aware of the purchases of both weapons found at the Zapata murder scene, and this was not similar to Fast and Furious. Do you buy that? Are you satisfied with that response?
Well, Anderson, we've been lied to.
Whoever let these guns walk should be held accountable.
Well, let me ask you this. If Mexico were to ask us to extradite the law enforcement officers who knowingly aided and abetted weapons going into Mexico, what would your reaction to that be?
I would explain to them that our concern in an investigation of this type is to take off the whole organization so we have the greatest impact possible.
If somebody gives a gun to somebody knowing they're going to commit murder, guess what we call them? We call them accomplices. Do you think the ATF have been accomplices to murder?
Absolutely.
So you're saying what they were doing was criminal?
Absolutely. Not just these individual agents, but people up the chain of command who have made the decision. The U.S. Attorney for Arizona just resigned. And this is a big deal. Now it's one step away from Eric Holder. This is his Department of Justice.
You're the person in charge of this, and believing that you were unaware of Operation Fast and Furious requires, to coin a phrase, a willing suspension of disbelief. It's hard for me to believe that you were unaware of this operation that went to Mexico. Now, my question is very simple. Who is the person in the United States government that made the decision of an Operation Fast and Furious to facilitate the guns going to Mexico? Who is that one person?
We don't know yet.
So you don't know who was responsible for the conduct of these thousands of guns going to Mexico? We don't know who that is?
We know that the case was opened in the ATF office in Phoenix a month or so before it was opened in the U.S. Attorney's office in Phoenix. We know that it was given OCDETF status sometime after that. But we do not know as yet who the particular person was, to the extent it is a person. To the extent it is a person. To the extent it is a person.
Eric Holder has some explaining to do. They need to be held accountable. People should be fired for this. We should even look in the future to hold them as accomplices and charged for these murders,
Let me tell you,
for these crimes.
As I said in my opening statement, it's going to continue to have tragic consequences.
More people are going to die, probably.
Unfortunately, I think that's probably true.
The person recklessly causes the death of another person under many state law, including Texas, where some of these guns were bought, it's manslaughter. It's a crime. And it's my belief that if the United States government helped facilitate reckless homicide, reckless killing of other people, this is a serious matter. And there may be people in our government, Justice Department, the ATF, that if they help facilitate reckless conduct that caused the death of an individual in the United States or in Mexico by sending these guns down there, they should be held criminally responsible for that conduct.
If the guns used in Brian's murder were part of this operation, then we'd want to know, will everyone in that operation that had to deal with those specific weapons be brought up on charges of facilitating the murder of Brian Terry?
Thank you. We will ask that question on your behalf. And so, Mr. Attorney General, on behalf of Mr. Heyer, who was Brian Terry's cousin and actually the spokesperson for his mother and his sister, I would ask you, to what lengths has your investigation into Operation Fast and Furious gone? And will everyone in that operation that had to deal with those specific weapons be brought up on charges facilitating the murder of Brian Terry?
Well, we are certainly working now to, I mean, this is an ongoing investigation. It's actually at a very sensitive time, and I'm not sure I can talk about it an awful lot about.
With regards to this being a Democratic or Republican issue, whether this is a, political game, if this is an election year charade, I think it's very important to recognize that you as the Attorney General, with all due respect, need to be held accountable, or someone does, as to what happened. So let me ask it this way. How many more Border Patrol agents would have had to die as a part of Operation Fast and Furious for you to take responsibility?
The gentlelady's time has expired. The gentleman may answer. Or not.
I should be held accountable for certainly my role in whatever I did or didn't do in connection with the supervision of Fast and Furious. But, yeah, I'm Attorney General of the United States, and I should also be held accountable and perhaps even given some credit. Imagine that, given some credit for the things that this Justice Department has done under my leadership.
Operation Fast and Furious is another embarrassment that falls squarely onto the shoulders of Attorney General Eric Holder and this Department of Justice. One of the things that I was raised upon in my 22 years in the United States military is that leaders take responsibility. They very rarely take credit. And it's time for Attorney General Holder to take responsibilities for the failures that are coming out of the Department of Justice. We believe that our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and our law enforcement officials should uphold the highest standards of honor, integrity, and character. If that is the litmus test, Eric Holder has failed the American people. So I asked Mr. Holder to step down from his position. I asked the President of the United States of America to recommend to Eric Holder to resign from this position. And if the President does not agree with that stance, then perhaps the President of the United States of America is also complicit in this horrible, tragic event, Operation Fast and Furious.
In an interview published yesterday, Attorney General Holder talked about his critics. This is a way to get at the president because of the way I can be identified with him, he said, both due to the nature of our relationship and, the fact that we're both African American.
To criticize your critics and accuse them of racism when you have legitimate questions about the top law enforcement official in this country does not serve him very well. And it's not going away. It's not political. It's not partisan. It's not Washington gotcha. You have a dead Border Patrol agent. You have dead Mexican citizens. These are legitimate questions. If we didn't ask him these questions, we should be run out of town.